Someone once told me something really beautiful, that when we have moments in our life that really, really are challenging, it just feel complete darkness. In those moments, sometimes, even when we turn to Hashem, many times, at least for me personally, specifically in the moments that are completely dark, we actually, there's no one home. There's no one home. Like at the moments that we really need him the most, like where are you? Like, how come I don't feel you? And I heard this beautiful, beautiful thing. It's kind of like if you watch a small child in a playground who's, most children are scared of dogs, right? You watch a child in a playground and they're playing, and the father, little boy's playing and the father's sitting on a bench somewhere, watching the child from the side. And someone comes along walking a dog, and it's a big dog and it's barking away and it's a little ferocious. And this little boy goes running down from the playground and crying and running over to his father, so scared, right? And of course the father, gets down and holds his hands open wide, and his son comes running into his arms. What do children do when they're afraid? So many times they'll close their eyes. There's a sense of, if you don't see it, it's not there, right? This child goes running into his father's arms, closes his eyes, takes his face, and he just presses it into his father's chest, just like snuggles in there real tight. And his father just wraps his arms around him, holds him. That's what's going on in our moments of darkness. That's what's going on. Make no mistake about it. Not only is he there, but the reason that it's so dark is because he's holding you so tight.
Welcome back to Around the Shabbos Table. I am your host, Ahron Wohlgelernter, and we are a project of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network. Today I'm going to have a conversation with somebody who I met recently, and I saw like the tip of the iceberg of her life and of her story, and how she lived with the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu through this, through her circumstances. And she's going to come on today and tell us her story. Because of the nature of what we're talking about today, it is a very sensitive story, so she wishes to remain anonymous, and because of its length, I'm going to split it into 2 episodes. This story just covers so many areas that we can sort of relate to, although it's a bit greater and bigger than I can imagine. The story runs from abuse to auto accident, physical disabilities, adoptions, all under the context of how we deal with this and how we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it. How the guest relates this to her children, how she relates to her children, and in essence the brachas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives her every day. And when I was talking to her, I felt, and she reiterated this a few times in the episode, but the main message here is that this story is alive. It's happening right now. She kept on saying this, and it's important to realize that we don't wait for the end till there's a little bow that we can tie and say, oh, okay, everything is good, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took care of us, until it's written in some famous book about Hashgacha Pratis. Life is happening, and we have to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it as it goes. So here is episode 1, and I hope you find it as meaningful as I did. Maybe who you are today, and then we'll dial it back, and why different parts of your life made up and affect the decisions that you were able to and continuously make today.
Wonderful. Okay. So I have the most beautiful, incredible life. I thank Hashem every day for it. I imagine people looking in from the outside who would know my entire life today would go, there's a lot of imperfection there. What is she laughing about? But it's, I guess with the perspective of, looking in the rearview mirror, I've lived quite a few decades already. It's perfect for me. And I think we learn that over time in life where, it might not, look so beautiful, but it's so perfect for me. It's so perfect in every way. And it really brings out the best in me. I'm very grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for every piece. We live out of town in a small community. We chose to live there. We actually moved from a larger community. And we chose to go there because my husband and I kind of hit a plateau in our growth, our ruchnius growth. And we sort of were in a community for over a decade and thought, almost a decade and a half actually. And suddenly we weren't like motivated to run to shiurim, to connect with, other, classes that were going on. And we sort of looked at each other and said, okay, there's no such thing in Yiddishkeit as being stagnant, right? If you're not going forward, by definition, you're falling. So we got to find the place. We got to find our makom. And we started researching. And funny enough for us, the farther we got from the East Coast, the happier we started feeling. So we started to check into different communities all across Midwest and Western United States, and we just spend different Shabbosim in different communities. And we got to the community we're in now, and we were invited there for Sukkot. We were there for all of Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And as soon as we stepped foot in the community, it just clicked. We just knew there was this unbelievable energy. It's a very much a Baal Tshuva community. So there's this incredible energy of growth and people just running to like thirst for more. And you cannot be surrounded by people who are like that and not be affected by it. And it wasn't just us. Our children were just floored. I mean, just like there were people in Shul that, I remember our very, very first Shabbos in Shul, a woman in her 80s came over. It's a very warm community. She said, "Oh, you look new here. Who are you?" And my kids were all around me. They were young. And I introduced myself and I said, we're checking out the community. And I said, "What's your name?" And she said, "My name is," and she told me her name. And she said, "And I am 3 years old today." And I thought, okay, there's a punchline. Like what's, and she started crying, this 80-something-year-old woman. And my kids were just looking up at her, they were small and just like with their mouths agape, like, what is going on? And she said, 3 years ago today, I became Jewish. I went into the mikvah and my husband and I got married, and I'm just feeling so overwhelmed with gratitude. And she said, it just was, I just remember that moment of going into the mikvah and coming out. And it was like I was walking around my whole life with dirty eyeglasses. And then someone took the film off. She's like, the whole world just like, I just saw it, for the first time. And she was just crying. And my kids were like, just completely speechless. And we walked home from Shul. We walked, where we were staying. And my kids were like, "Mommy, we want to live here. We need to live here." So that was the introduction to where we where we live.
That's where you live. And it's the energy and excitement about being Jewish that drew you into that. Yeah,
very much. And has continued to really pull us along and inspire us. The community itself is very much an outreach community, as you can hear. And there's really no such thing. It's very rare, except in Corona. We never really eat Shabbos meals by ourselves. Everyone in the community is either a guest or a host every week. No one eats by themselves. And we have all types of people by our table. We're so lucky to have many different types of people who are from all different, fall on all different sides and areas of the spectrum of Judaism, but also people who aren't Jewish, who are, we do live in the Bible Belt, so we got a lot of people that are interested, and many of them end up converting. We don't, obviously we don't encourage converts, but once the Beis Din accepts them into the community, we are encouraged to have them for Shabbosim. So we have a full spectrum, and a typical Shabbos by us when it's not Corona is about 20 to 30 people, unless we're lucky enough to get invited somewhere else, and then we get to
be in the 2030 crowd.
Right, exactly.
To your point of growth, my brother told me a great story today that we grew up in La Jolla in San Diego, and it's a similar type of energy there as well, where you have growth, and growth doesn't always look so pretty on the outside, as you have people who are holding in different places. So there was a frum guy who once came to move to San Diego, and he was there for Shabbos, and afterwards he said, "I'm not moving there." And when his Rebbe asked him why wouldn't you move? It's perfect for you. He said, I can't daven in a place where the guy next to me drove to shul on Shabbos and daven's better than me. So that it just speaks to the energy where you have people who may look inconsistent, but they're growing, and that's an energy that's beautiful.
Yeah, I remember actually when I was in seminary, one of our teachers drew kind of like a mountain, right? Like the slope of a mountain, but he put a ledge like halfway up the mountain and he put a dot on it. And he said, that's you. And it doesn't really matter where you are on the mountain, right? We're all headed in the same direction. We're all just trying to climb higher. So in that way, it really doesn't matter where people are holding on their journey. If we're all heading in the direction of, I want to be closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in whatever way that means, then honestly, we're all the same. Then we just have the same goals. We're all in the same place, right? So that's how it goes in the community that we live in, and we're very fortunate to have that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's layer number one is where you live.
Yes.
So tell us about your family. Tell us about your wonderful children we were able to meet, but just tell us about. Break that open, unpack that.
Okay, so we're going to have to go way back now.
Okay, we already went back. Okay.
We're going to have to go way back. So when I was 18 years old, this is many years ago, I was in a pedestrian auto accident. I was in Eretz Yisrael at the time, and it was the third day of Hanukkah. My married sister had sent me with her 6-month-old baby to go get groceries for, making latkes and Hanukkah stuff that night. And she had gone off somewhere else to, I think, if I remember correctly, her air conditioning was broken. She had to really do something big, so she couldn't have the baby with her. And in true Israeli fashion, I took all of the groceries and stuck it in the bottom of the stroller and around the baby, and how people shop there with their strollers. And it was before, the big jogging strollers, the big wheels and everything. It was, one of the older strollers that have the very small plastic wheels. So a little bit more difficult to navigate when it's heavy. And on my way back, I was crossing the street with a baby. I had to cross a very large intersection. I had to go from the sidewalk to the median. There was one crosswalk, and then there was a second crosswalk from the median to the second side. And when I was crossing from the first sidewalk to the median, the crosswalk was, the crossing signal was green for me. So I, stepped off the sidewalk, went across. The first vehicle that was waiting there, that I was crossing directly in front of, was a massive truck, a cement truck. And I noticed that I was next to the grill at the front of the truck. So the windshield of the driver was actually above my head. It was a very, very tall truck. I got to the median, and when I got to the median, I had to lift the stroller wheels up onto the median because there was a curb there. And I was having a hard time because the stroller was really heavy from all the stuff that I had put in it. Meanwhile, I saw the crossing signal turn from green to red. You still have time, you still have... it doesn't automatically turn green. And in Israel, the lights turn from red to yellow to green. So I saw the traffic light turn from red to yellow and out of my peripheral vision. And I was still trying to get that stroller up. And it just, I'm dragging out what happened, but this whole thing happened in like a matter of seconds. I knew that if the driver did not see me actually leave the sidewalk, he did not know I was in front of him. And so I listened for it, and then I heard the driver just release the brake, which is like, psh, right? And then as soon as I heard that, I just pushed the baby stroller forward onto the median. I knew I had to get the baby out of the way of the truck. And unfortunately, there was not time for me to get out of the way. And the truck first knocked me over. So the impact of just starting the truck, just the force of that knocked me over, and then it continued driving and went over me. I don't know why the truck stopped. I'm not sure if someone flagged it down or what. I don't know what happened there. But I did not lose consciousness the whole time. I can tell you exactly what the bottom of a truck looks like. A cement truck, at least.
The wheel went over you, or just it was the truck?
The wheel. Yeah, the wheel. The wheels are much, much, much higher than where the truck is, yeah. So the front wheels went over me. I sort of rolled out from under the truck when it stopped. It was probably 150 feet from where I had first been when I was crossing, sort of out in the middle of the intersection now. And just my first thought, obviously, was like, I got to make sure the baby's okay, So I tried to stand up, but my feet weren't working. And I think at that moment, I was like, you're sort of like taking in what just happened, even though my head was like, where's the baby? I was like, my second head was going, why aren't my feet working? And that realization, which was beyond me to comprehend, evoked a scream out of my throat, a kind of a supernatural scream out of my throat. But it wasn't from pain or anything. It was just like this shock of what just happened. And people came running right away, and I said, where's the baby? Is the baby okay? And they immediately made me just lay down on my back. And, typical what they do for emergencies in that situation, they have to immobilize you, make sure that you're not moving or anything. One of the very important things to realize about a situation like this is that the body actually goes into shock. And so there's no pain. You don't feel any pain, which is actually very dangerous. When the body goes into shock, it's very dangerous. It means the whole circulatory system, the way the blood is flowing, is actually going away from the heart. It's very, very, it's a sakana, like the body's in sakana right then. So, Eza Mitzion came, and, emergency came, and they just kept asking me what my name is and what my phone number is and who I am and do I know where I am. And I was like, I'm fine. My head didn't get hit. Just like my feet aren't working, but like I'm fine. Just like, I want to go home. I want to whatever. And they're like, no, you have to stay here. Are you feeling any pain? No, I'm not feeling any pain. Just let me go home. No, you can't go home. So they were just waiting to hear me say, yes, I do feel pain, because that would have been a good sign, right? So I just really laid there on my back. It was probably about an hour and a half before I felt anything. And I can just tell you that it was the most beautiful blue sky. Eretz Yisrael has many of them to offer, but that sort of seared into my brain during that time. I was just laying there. Obviously, they contacted my sister, and they came to get the baby, but who was fine. Baruch Hashem, he fell on a loaf of bread, not a scratch. So, Chasdei Shemayim, he was really very, very, a lot of nisim there. And
they brought you to the hospital? You were just there?
They don't move you. They won't move you until the body is showing that it's not in shock anymore. So I did lay there for a while, and then the pain doesn't come gradually like a toothache. It's kind of like from 0 to 1,000 when the system starts working. So when I started feeling, I felt everything. And then they did take me to in Eretz Yisrael, the hospital that is the top hospital outside of Yerushalayim. It's where they take soldiers, is Tel HaShomer. That's where they took me because they really didn't know what they were dealing with. So I was there. I went through a few surgeries, lots and lots of rehab. I lived in a wheelchair for a while, in and out of the hospital.
A while, I mean years?
Not years, but almost a year. Yeah, almost a year. So,
and you transferred back to the U.S.
Yes. So obviously the insurance company wasn't happy to keep paying, Israel. So once I was able to travel, I did come back and I had my final surgery in the States. The doctors in Israel, when they discharged me, I was still in a wheelchair when they discharged me, but when they discharged me, they told me that they can't really guarantee, the walking ability that I'll have. And because of my injuries, which were in my torso area, that they didn't know how it was going to affect my ability to have children. I think it just never penetrated. I'm not sure if I ever sort of accepted like what they were saying. Everything was so surreal that it was never like a real reality. People ask me, we make a Suda Tada every year, and people ask me like, wow, like, weren't you like your whole life changed? And I was like, I don't know. I remember them telling me that. I remember the meeting, the discharge meeting where all the department heads came together, but I honestly never, it wasn't that I didn't believe it. It just didn't relate to me somehow. Like so many things had happened that were beyond the doctors that I was like, okay, whatever. They're just saying what they think. Like it didn't really sink in that this was my reality. It was going to be my future. So I just went forward and I just kept doing therapy, and I kept, I was sure it was all going to be fine one day. Like, why wouldn't it be? That was just my attitude towards it. Fast forward, let's say, 2 years. I was asked one day if I would date someone who wears hearing aids, who's deaf. It wasn't a thing for me at all. It the deafness wasn't a thing for me, probably because I was very, very involved with the deaf chapter of NCSY as a child since I was 14 till I was almost 20. So I had a lot of interaction with people who were deaf, and it was very normal for me to be around people who were deaf. The biggest thing for me was that I noticed that people who are deaf, who sometimes are raised in homes maybe that aren't exposed to deafness or what that comes with, oftentimes like struggle with self-esteem, or maybe they felt like misunderstood, or maybe the parents tried to, I'm talking like years and years ago. I'm talking like, 30, 40 years ago when we didn't have cochlear implants. Now they can put on a baby a cochlear implant and they can basically grow up, more or less in a hearing world. This is like you had to choose. Either you were part of a deaf world or a hearing world. There was really nothing in between. And so, there's no judgment here. It was just like you had to decide, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to teach my child, right, to communicate with the world? Or am I going to teach the world to communicate with my child, right? I know that was for my in-laws. That was their question. Like, do we teach him sign language? And then, his social life will be limited to the people who know sign language, which is one way to go, right? And he'll feel a part of the deaf world. Or we'll teach him to, and that's a different story. My husband has an incredible story in his own right. But this was a different world when it came to the issue of raising a deaf child. And so I was very, very aware of this self-esteem component. And I knew from where I was coming from that it was really important for me to marry someone who had a very good sense of self. I knew I needed that strength. And so I right away looked into that aspect of it. And then the second aspect I looked into was if it was genetic. And the reason that I did that is because I saw what it took for families who were raising deaf children. I was involved with them.
You're involved, right?
And I we learned in school, about David HaMelech, and that we're not supposed to ask for tests, and what does that mean exactly? And from my small understanding, what it meant was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a test that kind of comes in like a package. It comes like the test and the strength to get through it and overcome it and grow from it. But sometimes if we ask for a test on its own, not necessarily does it come in that package. So, for me, I felt in that respect, I would be sort of putting myself into a situation where I was asking for a test, so to speak. And I had to make sure that I was aware of, if it was genetic or not. Ended up not being genetic. And we got married very happily. And I remember when we got engaged, I remember a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, she meant nothing bad by this. She was being very honest. And she said to me the day after she heard I was engaged, she said, you could have married anyone. Like, you're good looking, you're smart, you have like so many amazing like talents. You could have gotten anyone. Why did you choose someone who's deaf? And I guess I was like taken aback because I didn't even think of it that way. And what came out of my mouth was, when you look at him, you see hearing aids. When I look at him, I see a diamond, like I see a person. And when I walked away from that conversation, I kind of like looked up to the heavens and winked and went, that's why I had to be in a wheelchair. Because...
Why was that connected to that?
Okay. When you're in a wheelchair and you're being pushed around, outside, inside, doesn't matter. Think about it for a minute. If you pass someone in a wheelchair, what's the first thing you see?
A wheelchair.
A wheelchair. There you go. So when you're the person in the wheelchair and you spend time in it and you come out from it, anytime you come up against someone who has a thing, it's not anything you work on. You just automatically don't see the thing.
Don't see it.
Yeah, you just see the person. You can't help it. So
I just had Bracha Getz on the show, and she writes a lot of children's books, right? Beautiful children's books.
Yeah.
And one of them was about for kids to get them to break the stigma of physical disabilities. And she was saying, we always do, you have a choice when you see somebody. You can do something with an S. So either you could stare or you could smile. And she says, once you smile, everything melts away. And you don't see those things anymore.
Right.
Now you're smiling to them, they smile back, and now you can have a conversation. Now you can interact with them without seeing the outside. So
yeah. My husband actually has an incredible thing. One time I watched him right very soon after we were married. We were in Shul, and he saw a kid actually staring at his hearing aids. He didn't have implants then. My husband was born way before they had implants. He was just staring at him. And also my husband has a deaf voice, meaning, you can tell something's going on there very clearly. So he was just listening to him talk and looking at his ears. A little kid, it's very normal. And my husband bent down and said to the kid, like, are you wondering what these are? He pointed to his hearing aids. And the kid was shy, but he smiled and he shook his head yes. And he said, is that your father over there? We knew who his father was. He said, is that your father over there? He said, yeah. He said, what's your father wearing on his eyes? He said, my father's wearing glasses. He said, what's the glasses do for him? He said, it helps him see. He said, what the glasses do for your dad's eyes, so these do for my ears. And the kid, just his whole face changed. He was like, he thought about it, made sense. He was cool with it, skipped away. Like, as soon as you find that commonality, right? As soon as you break the barrier of different or how do I relate, right? Then that's it. It melts away. We're all the same.
So that allowed you, obviously that conversation allowed you not to see that. And then, so you got married.
So we got married, and Chasdei Shemayim, we had children. True story. It wasn't until I'm trying to think, maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years after we were married. Every time we do a Sudas Hadai, I try to bring a different lesson and aspect. And I was speaking up there one time by Sudas Hadai, Mamish. It was a long time after the accident, and we already had our children, and I got to this part where the doctor said they don't know how it's going to affect my ability to have children, and my husband's eyes just got really wide, and I was talking into a microphone, and there was a people there, and I saw his face, and I was I just slapped my hand across my mouth, and I was I totally forgot to tell you. And everyone started laughing, but like after it, I was like, I really had to think about like why it wasn't even a thing in my head. But we spoke about this already, but it just really wasn't a thing in my head.
Were there any, so obviously the fear of having children was there, but then, of not having children, but then were there any other physical disabilities that lasted from there? I do have. You can't go through something like that to the body and not feel, but it's nothing that affects my daily living. It's, like the common things are, people who go through a lot of trauma to their body, they can tell you what the weather is going to be like the next day. So I can definitely tell you what the weather is going to be like. And when I am, when I was carrying my children, at the end of pregnancy, it was difficult for me to carry them, just because there's certain muscles and ligaments that are no longer attached. So, I really, I rather had to carry on my own. So what's the process for you when you experience that pain? Does it bring you back to the accident? Does it bring you to your Suda Sayda? Does it bring you to a place of grateful for all the times you don't have it? Like, what's the process of that when you experience the pain from the accident? This reminds me of another question. At a first Suda Sada, and my first Suda Sada, it was just, maybe a year and a half after the accident. There were big Rabbanim there. It was in Eretz Yisrael. There were very big Rabbanim there. And one Rav stood up and spoke, and then he said, I have a question for you. And he looked at me and he said, can you share with us what you were thinking that moment that you were hit and, run over by the truck? And I said to him, yeah, I remember exactly what I was thinking. And he's like, okay, what? And everyone's like on the edge of their seat. And I said, I was thinking, wow, this is what it feels like to be run over by a truck. And people kind of like chuckled. I was being very, very honest. Like, you're asking me a question, like, when I feel that pain at the end of pregnancy, like, do I connect it? No, it's very normal. It's just a normal part of life, and it doesn't really connect to anything other than that. It's a reminder that I have a body and it works, Baruch Hashem, right? But it doesn't really, there's no trauma there. There's no fear of anything. There's nothing like that. It's just kind of, it's my normal, right? I don't really know what pregnancy at the end without that feels like, right? People ask my kids all the time, what's it like to have a father who's deaf? And they're like, well, what's it like to have a father who's not deaf? Like, it's their normal, right? It's just that becomes their normal. So I think in general, there's big things that have gone on in my life, and they just become, everyone has things. They just become our normal. And we can just choose to just let them sit there and just pick them up when we need them, maybe look at them a little, maybe get what we need from them, and then move on. But nothing remnant from the accident really stops me in my tracks except the anniversary of the day it happened, which is when we do our Suda Sada, and that's kind of like, what we do on Yom Kippur, where we just really stop and take stock, and that's what it's like for me. Why do you say our Suda Sada? Sorry to nitpick, but because when you go through a situation and come out on the other side, but statistically you shouldn't be here, then everything that comes after that is part of the nace. My husband, my children, the friends that I met afterwards, the experiences that I've had, right? I've had over 20 years of, almost 25, right, of nisim and niflos that are all part of what happened that day. I'm here. But it didn't happen then. It's still happening now. So ours is collective to everybody that's come since. Yeah. We actually had one year at the Suda Sada. I said to the kids, okay, your turn. Mommy talks every year. It's your turn to talk.
And so I didn't speak that year. My kids spoke, each one of them, about how my accident affected their lives, and is sewn into the fabric of who they are. It's a beautiful thing. They each spoke, separately.
Well, then I'm happy I nitpicked there on that question, because I know, I think that's insanely powerful. That what did they, if you remember, but what did they say? What did the kids, just knowing them, I can imagine they said something.
I have to remember now.
But okay, so even if you don't, then how do you think, from your vantage point, how do you think it affects their lives and who they are and who they'll become?
I think it kind of goes together with, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that in marrying, someone with my husband's set of circumstances, it's definitely not a disability. He is so abled. But with
what an awesome way to say it, just to say circumstances. It's not disabilities, right?
What
just
Hashem
what
gave
it
him.
is,
Yep.
right?
His ears don't work. With his set of circumstances, and I didn't even realize that I was coming with my set of circumstances from a child's point of view growing up. What that does is, when they come up against something different, it doesn't faze them. We just kind of pass that down by osmosis, I guess. They grew up in it. They saw it in so many different types of ways, within the different aspects of our lives. And, and there's so many layers of it. My husband's a Baal Tshuva, right? And we have this amazing close relationship with his parents. They are so close with their grandchildren, right? What a beautiful thing for children to see that, no, they don't keep Shabbos. I know they don't keep kashrus, but you can actually have a beautiful, respectful relationship if you base it on your similarities and you just put the differences aside. So I think that kind of is definitely the biggest way that it affected them. Aside from that, they definitely have a very strong appreciation for the fact that they are here in this world. Through my story, they are very aware, that they might not be here if I wasn't here. So that's a big deal for them. And I think they're just I think they feel like they're cool because their mom got run over by a truck. Who gets to say that? So I think they think that's kind of cool.
Tale, right? I think that message always speaks to me because, like I said, we're very we try to hide our differences. I don't know why our communities sometimes do that. And there's a system of conformity and of everyone has to be the same. And it's scary what people try to hide and change about themselves. And the fact that your children grow up that, whether it be this gratitude for being alive and for their mother being alive, whether their father having certain circumstances or their father not coming from a certain world and a certain place, and things don't faze them because they're not hiding anything. We spend Shabbos with your children. They're open. They're excited and happy with who they are, and they you can ask them any question. And I got to schmooze with one of your kids, and we were doing dishes together after Shabbos, and we were schmoozing, and nothing's off limits. There was no hiding. There was no nothing, and that's super important. Just to turn it also to the listener, to us, that there's nothing to hide. If anything, you be grateful, and when you're grateful, it teaches your kids and teaches people around you to be grateful and to not be fazed by all the differences that happen. Everyone's different. Everyone has something.
Yeah, I want to mention, you just reminded me something, actually. I know a very big takeaway for my kids, not just from this, but it definitely started from this, was as a teenager, even before when I was younger, but I was really bothered by it as a teenager. I had a certain midah that really I couldn't break. I just couldn't get it. And I really, it felt like it was defining who I was in the most awful way. I couldn't get past it. And I had tried so many different things. by myself with other people, getting advice. I just couldn't break it. And I knew where it was coming from. I understood why I was like getting myself into trouble in this area all the time with myself, but I just couldn't get there. And as I was walking down the street, pushing the stroller, as I was that day getting to the crosswalk, I was thinking in my head, wow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I just can't do this. Maybe you need to just stick your hand into my life and just like punch me hard. I literally was thinking that. And then I crossed the street and I got hit by a truck. So then, don't take any conclusions from this yet. One of the incredible people that I had the opportunity to speak to after the accident was Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz. And I asked him this question. And he made it very clear to me that since I'm not a tzaddik, I can't just like say things and assume that, I get automatic results. That's not how it works. I'm a Beinoni. And there's many different reasons why Hashem sends suffering to people. And he gave me, it's not for this podcast, but he gave me a beautiful perspective. But I was left to go figure out this midah on my own then, right? Because the accident surely wasn't going to cure it. And this midah actually followed me into the early part of my marriage and when my children were younger. And I made a choice to actually share what I was thinking that day with my children and to actually tell them what I was struggling with. And I made them part of, I want you to know that this is something that I'm working on. And that was very powerful for them. I do remember one of my kids mentioning that when they spoke of learning that it's okay not to be perfect, and Hashem loves us, and He's not going to punish us, right? Even if we're not perfect. So being flawed is, again, it doesn't define who we are. It's a springboard to where we can get. So I have to say I definitely struggled with this midah for many, many years. And it did take something strong for me to finally, say that's it and overcome it. But it wasn't physical pain. It was more of an emotional thing that I realized this is not going to work. I have to, that's it. Cold turkey. That's it. So that's just a side point, but definitely something that that wasn't just weaved from this accident, but just really weaved a lot throughout our home. This whole idea, I always say, people say the most powerful words you could tell your children, I love you, right? Like, actually, I really think the most powerful words we can tell our children is I'm sorry. For children to see and understand that we're human and we're making mistakes and we're on this journey to use those mistakes to lift ourselves higher is the most powerful gift we can give them. Because guess what? They're going to go out in life and they're going to make mistakes. And they need to know it's okay. Like, we don't need to fall apart. It's actually a gift. And we can use it. We can grow from it. So, yeah, that definitely was a very big part of lessons that the kids took from it. I actually have my clothes from the accident. I keep them in my closet. I take them out once a year. They had blood on them and they got torn up and they were cut eventually when I went to the hospital. They cut them off of me, but I did keep them. Some of what I'm saying now is like it evokes these things in them. Yeah.
So that was the end of part 1, and I hope you were able to take something from that. Please, I feel like this episode is bigger and greater than I, so if you could share this with someone who might be going through a challenging time, who might have had a challenging life and needs to put it into perspective, this is shareable. And I hope you do share that with at least one other person. So if you want part 2, you can go to the next episode and find part 2.